Hello, I am C-3PO, and I believe the storyteller is ready, so let us begin.
So the episode starts off, and from the desert comes, well, somebody that we know, Cobb Vanth, our old friend, the sheriff of Mos Pelgo. He sees the Spice running pikes and basically says, get off of our turf. They're not too eager on that. He shoots a bunch of them and then scares off the last one and then dumps out the Spice, showing that he is a true man of honor and that he doesn't want this Spice muddying up his town. We then cut to space, and the Mandalorian is flying into a very lush planet. And who is on the surface but R2-D2? R2-D2, a droid, which is Mando's not necessarily his favorite, guides him through the forest to a bunch of other droids that are building the Jedi Temple for what we can pretty much assume is, wait a minute, that's Luke Skywalker's Jedi Temple that Ben Solo destroys. From then on, Din has to wait. We cut to Luke and Grogu training. They're around a bunch of frogs, and Grogu's very curious. Luke is telling Grogu about his experiences with Yoda. Grogu has some flashbacks to his time in the Jedi Academy and his memories there, and then, of course, of Order 66. We then cut to Din, who is awakened by Ahsoka, who we now see is also on this planet. Ahsoka tells Din that the reason that he's here is probably more for himself than for Grogu, but in that same vein, she's willing to take his gift to Grogu for him if he's willing to let Grogu make the decisions on his own and not be overly pressured by seeing somebody that he loves. So this is tough for Din, but Din leaves. We then cut to more training between Grogu and Luke. Luke is getting him to remember how to jump and how to really leverage the Force and be more in combat and acrobatics. Ahsoka and him have a bit of a conversation as well about the attachment that he has with Mando. We then cut back to Boba Fett, finally, for the first time in a really long time. We have a roundtable meeting of Boba's team and all of his gang, and essentially they need some more people, feet on the ground. And so Din says, well, let me go see if I can get some recruits. Din goes to Mos Pelgo, where he's going to see Cobb Vanth to recruit some extra help. They discuss potentially joining Boba's little army against the Pikes. Din uses basically Obi-Wan's logic of, you must see this is a symbiotic circle. And from there, Cobb is not really convinced, but from the desert comes a stranger. And this stranger has decided to prove Din's point for him. This is the baddest, meanest, ugliest bounty hunter the galaxy has seen over the last 50 years. This is Cad Bang, the former mentor to Boba Fett and the most ruthless bounty hunter there is. And we see this by him outdrawing Cobb Vanth and his deputy, shooting both of them. Cobb likely not dead, deputy very, very dead, and Cad Bang proving the point that, hey, the Pikes are going to continue to do business, just don't get in the way, and everything is going to be fine. Don't side with Boba, and everything is going to be fine. Then we cut to, once again, Luke and Grogu. Oh, geez, this so much happened in this episode. We cut to the sanctuary, where a couple of Pikes are in there. They sit down for a drink, leave immediately, and they forget their Camtono, which has a bomb. It explodes the sanctuary, so it's no longer there. Then we cut to Luke and Grogu, where they're meditating, and Luke pulls out the gift from Din, as well as Yoda's lightsaber, giving the biggest, what's her name? Sophie's Choice since, Sophie's Choice. And we are left on that amazing cliffhanger of what is Grogu going to choose, the life of the Mandalorian or the life of the Jedi, because there can only be one. And that is the most exciting episode of Mando's season 2.5, because it sure was not the Book of Boba Fett.
Yet again.
What an episode, eh?
Well, I mean, I'm really overwhelmed. I don't even know where to begin. And I feel like we've started a lot of podcasts that recap episodes of TV that have that kind of tone. Certainly that was the case a little bit last week, and it was absolutely the case after the season 2 finale of Mando. To see Luke like a little bit was such an exciting novelty. And yes, there was a bit of a tease that maybe they could do a little bit more with that capability going forward. I kind of thought they would be more sparing even than they were in this one episode of another show entirely. I think I don't want to talk about Luke just yet. Can we start by talking about Cobb Vanth, because that's where the episode begins?
Absolutely. So great to see him return.
This is like one of the top 5 coolest people I've ever seen with my eyes.
He is so smooth and
insane.
It's executed flawlessly. He just comes across with so much honor and swagger at the same time in this opening shot. And he's so different though, because he's so slight here and he doesn't have the armor, but he's still got all the swagger.
He has a ridiculous amount of movie star charisma. And we've talked before about the meta casting of someone like Timothy Olyphant in a Western milieu. And that was a little bit more true with The Mandalorian as a TV show than it turns out to be of Boba Fett, which is actually not really a Western in the same sense. But as soon as Cobb Vanth enters it, it's more Western than it's ever been. Like literally a black hat walks into town and there's a shootout and we show like fingers trembling over triggers. It's like it doesn't end at terms like sheriff. He has like a bit of a Southern drawl here in Freetown. I love when they lean right into the genre. That's something that excites me in Star Wars. And with Timothy Olyphant, they're perfectly equipped to do that. And it was such a treat to get it out of this show. Now, he is very cool and a son of a bitch in his first 2 scenes in this episode. In the third one, obviously it's incredibly compelling. This deputy he has is immediately irritating. As soon as the other guy rolls into town too, you're like, oh, well, the deputy's not long for this world. You can't even stay inside. I agree that Cobb is probably not dead, if only because what a terrible waste that would be.
Yeah. And it looks like he was shot in the shoulder as well. And they were yelling for medical supplies. So it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, there was just like one of those big guys kind of looked up at the horizon after checking on Cobb, and it seemed a little bit ominous to me, but I suspect he'll be okay. If only because like Mando has to come back and check on him. The thing about this bounty hunter, say his name again.
Cad Bang.
Cad Bang. You've mentioned this guy before, but that's not a name in my Star Wars Rolodex. I'm familiar with it only because you've said it a few times, but I couldn't have told you that Cad Bane was a bounty hunter. And so a weird thing happens where they reveal his red eyes like you're supposed to put it together in that moment. And maybe a few of you are, but most people aren't. And he asks him twice what his name is, and Cad Bane doesn't tell him either time. And so it does kind of create this idea of like, well, this is going to be a name you recognize, when for most people it isn't.
Yeah, I don't necessarily know if that's, I wonder what someone who has no idea about Cad Bane thinks of something like this, because the red eyes, well, no, but you knew that you felt like you were, I don't know. Okay, maybe that is a good question then, because I think if you maybe feel like you were almost missing out on the reveal, is that what I'm getting?
Well, I'll put it like this. He had blue skin, and I was like, is this Thrawn dressed like a cowboy?
Oh, okay. Well, also, do you know that Thrawn has red eyes? Because that would have made it even worse.
I do know that only because I've seen him on the covers of Timothy Zahn books, and I figured like, well, it doesn't look exactly like how I've seen him illustrated before, but like he has blue face and red eyes, and he is obviously very sinister. And so I'm like, this could definitely be Thrawn, because Thrawn's been hinted at a year ago in this universe.
Yeah, that's very fair. Totally different species. Cad Bane is a Duro and Thrawn is a Chiss. And so that makes complete sense, though, that you would think that. I mean, blue skin, red eyes, evil bad guy that is kind of appearing out of nowhere. But for the people that knew the character, the silhouette is all that you needed to see. There's no one else in Star Wars that wears that hat. That hat is Cad Bane. He is based off of the bad or the ugly, and the good, the bad, and the ugly. I don't remember which one he's based off of, but he is supposed to be this ridiculous Western, like so over the top, but at the same time, so bloody cool. Like he has rocket boots as opposed to like a jetpack. And I think I saw it more as, I was hoping, I guess, that you would have had a similar reaction to this as you had with Black Chrysanthemum, where it's just, this is, oh, this big badass looking Wookiee, or this big badass looking guy who's coming in clearly working for the Pikes.
I did, don't get me wrong. I was like, who's this dude? He's awesome. And I didn't necessarily think he was Thrawn, but that's the only name I could pull at based on the few
Gotcha.
visual cues I was being given. Regardless, I'm psyched to see this guy. Unless, of course, he killed Cobb Vanth, which I think would be a huge missed opportunity. But like, this guy's going to play a role going forward. So,
yeah, there is a chance that he could die in the next episode even. It would be disappointing, but you would get enough out of being able to maybe reuse him in other shows at other timelines. So a little bit of backstory on Cad Bane. Cad Bane was hired by Palpatine on the Emperor on a number of occasions, or actually, sorry, Darth Sidious on a number of occasions to basically kidnap senators, to kidnap children of the Force. That was one of Cad Bane's major tasks. He was in charge of other bounty hunters when they were working on tag team missions. He was the greatest of an era. He was somebody that was always like head to head with Jango Fett and took Boba a little bit under his wing. So there was going to be a Clone Wars arc where he really took Boba under his wing. And in the end, it settles up with a duel. And the duel is supposed to be what gives Boba the dent in his helmet. And Cad Bane, we don't know what happens to Cad Bane. We assumed that that's how he would die. But he shows up in the Bad Batch. He shows up in the Bad Batch chasing down Omega, who is Boba Fett's sister. And he has a patch on his head. He gets his hat blown off in one spot, and you see a metal patch on his head, as if he's been like nicked in the side of the head and has been repaired, and thus has had this duel with Boba Fett. So it is to be believed, although not executed in canon, that Boba Fett and Cad Bane had a duel to the death after their mentorship process, with both resulted in each other getting shot in the head and both somehow living to tell the tale.
So do you think that Boba Fett's going to finish the job in this series? Is going to kill him once and for all?
And they never showed it, so there's a chance they could show it now. Yeah. They could redo that same duel, finish it off, or they could kind of keep things going. But this puts a much better villain in front of the face of the Pikes. The Pikes aren't interesting enough on their own. Having Cad Bane being the guy to do the dirty work, that's what I want to see. And they brought Corey Burton back to do the voice, which was necessary because the voice is the most iconic part, except for maybe the hat. But he has he's taken on Jedi, and he's taken on Anakin and Ahsoka and Obi-Wan, and all at the same time, actually, and done decently well against all three of them at the same time. Like, this is an incredible fighter and just bounty hunter.
I hope we didn't lose too many people in the first few episodes of Book of Boba Fett, which obviously were like underwhelming for a lot of folks. Shaping up to all be a part of the Mandoverse that we already established was phenomenal. And so that's really exciting. Let's work backwards. Let's go back to Boba's palace, where we did see him for the first and only time in 2 full episodes. But am I wrong to remember that he didn't have any lines? Did Fennec do all the talking in that scene?
Fennec did all the talking.
That's nuts. That's like, I mean, I'm sorry, Tamora Morrison, but like, how does he feel about this being the namesake of the show and being benched to this extent? Like, this,
he loves it.
How do you know? And why?
Because he specifically, well, I don't know if he maybe loves being benched, but he has said specifically that the best of the season was yet to come. And this was before the episodes where he was benched. And also, he specifically, whenever Jon Favreau wasn't on set, tried to give his lines to Ming-Na Wen, being like, oh, Boba doesn't need to say this. Like, Fennec can say this. And Ming-Na was just like, oh, you're being generous. And he's like, no, Boba's mysterious. He doesn't need to say all these things. And John was like, no, you're going to say what I need you to say.
Today, I was reading this book by William Goldman called Adventures in the Screen Trade, and he's kind of delineating the difference between a character actor and a movie star. And he told this fascinating story about the movie, I think it's the movie Marathon Man, wherein Dustin Hoffman, who at the time was one of the biggest movie stars in the world, and in the truest sense, there's a scene where Dustin Hoffman's character has to, in the middle of the night, hears a bump in the night, and he has to reach into his bedside table and pull out a flashlight and engage in like a scuffle with a person who has broken into his house. And Dustin Hoffman's issue with the character is that he doesn't believe the character would have a flashlight in his bedside table. The director says, well, lots of people have flashlights in their bedside table. And Dustin Hoffman says, well, I'm not playing lots of people. I'm playing this guy. And so he put up this ridiculous fight about how he couldn't authentically play the character if he didn't really believe in this aspect of the writing. And William Goldman all along is just very sure that it had nothing to do with the honesty of art, that Dustin Hoffman just didn't want anyone to think his character was a baby. And so it's this hilarious story about egos and how movie stars, and that's one of the big differences between character actors and movie stars, is that movie stars aren't really concerned with anything except for how they come off, which is a little bit of a harsh criticism. But I say all this to say that definitely in this instance, Tamara Morrison belongs in the other camp. Like, he just wants the show to be better. And if it comes at the expense of his screen time or his getting to say the cool line, obviously we celebrate that, and good for him.
Yeah, absolutely. And he just seems like such a likable guy too. Yeah. So that definitely adds to it. But he was right in saying the best was yet to come. These episodes have been incredible, and Boba should be in them more, or they should have done a better job of maybe dispersing this season or naming it something different entirely. But
very oddly balanced, and it's strange that they've given it the name The Book of Boba Fett, because we wouldn't otherwise be having this problem. Star Wars has a long history of telling its TV stories in these little contained arcs. We talked about a lot of that in the animated series before. And so they've done that very similarly with the Boba and the Tusken Raiders arc, and how he establishes his crime syndicate and how he got out of the Sarlacc and everything. That was a 4-episode arc. And if you view it contained, fine, it's an installment of Star Wars. But the overall show is called Book of Boba Fett. And so while this week's episode and last week's too are individually great episodes of television, they're not great episodes of the Book of Boba Fett, because
agreed,
they don't, I mean, they do contribute to the overall story. I guess I come back to what I said last week about how Star Wars isn't a very unique situation in how they get to approach storytelling in this big, broad sense. Marvel is the only one that has a similar opportunity in terms of like what they know their audience has already seen and their ability to blend stories. It doesn't.
Yeah. And I just think of, like, when I think of the Clone Wars and the number of arcs that weren't about the Clone Wars, I think that it could have been easier to just make like that 4-episode arc, or make it 3 episodes like we talked about for the first 4 episodes, and just put that in the Mandalorian and just make this Mandalorian season 3. I think it and then it guarantees you're getting people to watch it, and you're not getting people to fall off the Mandalorian by a 3-episode interlude about Boba Fett when they know that that's what it is. And then you just need, like, I don't know, 5 minutes of cutting to Din in like episode 2, just so that you're like reminded that it's, oh yeah, that's still going on. It just it just feels very strange decision making wise. But maybe that's all I want to say about it, because I enjoy it so much and it's such incredible television that it just seems confusing and disappointing in that it's going to limit the number of people who will see it, but it doesn't take away from the fact that this might be one of the most rewatchable things Star Wars has ever given me. And that's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my, I can't even imagine the Easter eggs in this that we've yet to draw, although you probably discovered a lot more than I did. So in this meeting, of course, Din has arrived at the palace now, which is exciting. Black Chrysanthemum's there, Timo Supremo's there, and also the mayor's Major Domo is there, which I found interesting. Yes. Is he an ally now?
No, he's kidnapped.
Oh, he was just kind of standing around in the room.
Well, yeah, what is he going to do? Try and run away?
That's a good point.
No, they have had him, I think, chilling in the adjacent Rancor pit, probably.
Yeah, probably so.
In the garrison.
There was a cool cut between that and when we went back to Cobb Vanth, where we saw the skull of a crate dragon on top of the Jawa crawler, which was
Yes.
so huge. It was so cool.
I know, and like I forget who mentioned it, but I watched a couple like videos on the episode today just because I couldn't get enough Star Wars fix and listen to like a few Star Wars podcasts. And somebody mentioned it's crazy that was like the 25th coolest thing that was in the episode.
Yeah, it's forgettable almost because of how much stuff there was here.
But it's still amazing, and it's a great tie back to like it's very likely the head of the great dragon that was killed in Mando season 2.
Yeah, I know. Okay, I guess Ahsoka is next. For some reason, it really didn't occur to me we might see her in this show.
It makes no sense that she's in this show. It makes no sense that she's on this planet. It makes no sense in any way, shape, or form. But I don't care because it was great to see her.
So you don't consider this a take back then? Like canonically, you don't have a problem with her being there? Because it seems like it is a special occasion that she's arrived there.
It's a special occasion that we are seeing her. It's a special occasion for us, but it was played out in the way of, her, like she's spoken with Luke a lot already. They've clearly engaged. Like maybe she arrived on this planet and that was the first time they met. I will be very disappointed if we never get to see their first encounter, because that will feel like a far more important moment than seeing her be there to pass along the gift for Grogu sort of thing. Like that doesn't seem to align as much for me as.
Do you mean because of the Anakin of it all, that it would be symbolic that she's reunited with the Skywalkers? Because she even hints at that in this episode. She says, "You're so much like your father."
Yeah, and I'm an old friend of the family, and
maybe the title of the episode, "I'm an old friend of the family," is an incredible line.
It is an incredible line, and there's so many potential ones, but that one is probably the one that takes the cake. And her around R2, like that is something, like they spent so much time together in the Clone Wars, and they were so close with Anakin, and to see the two of them there with Luke, and the fact that like she didn't know that Anakin came back at the end and turned back to the light side of the Force. Luke would have been probably the one that would have told her that, or maybe she felt it in the Force. But either way, just the conversations the two of them could have, will I ever see you again, perhaps, is not a good enough end to their conversing. We need to see more, absolutely. So that's something that it didn't make sense for her to be there because we didn't see how she got there, and it feels like we need to see how their relationship has formed. But I'm okay waiting to see that completely. And there was just so much, like just the glances that they share. There's just so much you can unpack from that, especially what we're going to get with Ahsoka and the fact that Hayden Christensen is going to be in that. And then you'll be able to kind of tie it back to these scenes with Luke. It's just so exciting.
I mean, I just think it's a little bit of an Ahsoka appetizer, because it's going to be a little while before we actually get to see her show. And so they're just like, hey, don't forget about this character who we like made a big deal of a year and a half ago. Like we're still working on that. And there's a lot of stuff in the pipeline, but like, sure, she's a part of the overall Force tapestry right now. And we're doing a big time Force episode. And so she's also just like useful there for expository reasons. Like it's just, it's important that somebody, otherwise, and I guess we're going to talk about Luke now. Otherwise, Luke would have had to have a private audience with Mando without Grogu present. And Luke would have had to be the one to say, I don't think it's a good idea if you see him right now. And that would feel wrong, because it would feel motivated by Luke's agenda within the new academy. And so it's actually good that a third party gives Mando that heartbreaking perspective. And it was heartbreaking. And how many times are they going to break my heart over the separation between Mando and his little friend? How many times? Because it was a few times in this episode, God damn it.
Oh, I know. And you want to see the two of them reunite. And he's got such a, like this, I'm storming in here. My kid's in trouble, but like, I don't care. My kid's my kid and he can do no wrong sort of thing. Yeah. Well, it's my choice to go see him, and lines like that. And he just misses him so much, and you can hear it in his voice, and like his voice cracks at one point. And when he just looks up in the distance and you can kind of see their silhouettes, it's so sweet. Although, did you see the point that this was super funny? I only saw it on my obviously on the rewatch. It looks like in the distance, if you zoom in, that Luke bends down and gives Grogu knucks.
Really?
He goes to gives a little fist bump.
I mean, maybe, sure.
He might be handing him a rock or something, but from a distance, it just looks like he's giving Grogu a fist bump.
Probably not, because this version of Luke is so
stoic,
monasterial and very like almost stern and solemn. Let's talk about him. Let's talk about him. He is deep faked,
and he looks awesome.
Well, yes, obviously that's the discussion to be had here. I have to say up front that I've never seen a person youngified or magically put into a Star Wars movie in a way that we didn't know was possible, via Leia or Tarkin or Luke last year, or the several different ways they've done it in the past. I've never seen it and not at first had wonder goggles, where the first time I see it, I'm like, it's amazing. It's perfect. I see nothing wrong with it. And then over time, I can see stuff that's wrong with it. And there are a few examples that are more egregious than others. So I've only seen this episode once. I saw it with wonder goggles. It's definitely the best it's ever been. Do you think it's as sensational as I think it is?
It is. It is as sensational as you think it is.
How do we live in this world? It's incredible.
It's insane. I watched it twice through, but I watched a couple scenes a third time, and it's just so bloody good. It shows that hiring Shamook from YouTube was the greatest decision ever.
Yeah.
And he has come to life. It's not Max Lloyd Jones. It's a guy named Scott Lang, I think. But like Mark Hamill's,
Scott Lang is the name of Ant-Man. So
I know.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So
I did look that up after, because I was like, that's a little odd. But he also was the stunt double for Boba in the tragedy, the episode where Boba comes back and kicks an incredible amount of ass. Okay. So it's that same guy. I don't know what he looks like, but
well, it's a differently physical performance than last year's with Max Lloyd Jones, and so they obviously just needed a different kind of physical presence on camera. But that's part of what makes it sensational filmmaking in this case, because he's not just standing there, or when he's flailing his lightsaber, he's not wearing a hood. I mean, I guess I can tell because I know that it's not 26-year-old Mark Hamill or whatever, but like, I can't believe how forthcoming, how giving they were with his presence in this episode and his action in this episode.
He's moving everywhere. There's nothing there. There's no hidden hood, like you said. There's no camera tricks to try and get around not having him do something. They're fully leaning into it as if he were there. There's a couple times in which I'd say the worst thing about it is the speech coming, like really feeling like it's coming out of his mouth. Yeah. They're able to execute it in a great way with the Mandalorian. I don't know what the helmet is able to create that barrier that works perfectly. And the mouth movements are good. And it's not like they're not lined up, but there is something missing that I can't quite put my finger on. It's almost as if maybe it's the voice booth angle, the fact that I can tell the wind hasn't carried Mark Hamill's voice. And I know that they dub over a lot of things in movies, but it just feels maybe a little too voice boothed. And so there's a couple points in which it feels very muted, the delivery and just the way it's portrayed. And there's one point it looks where his nose is broken. But other than that, it was mind-blowing the way that they were able to, he's got a bit of a different hairstyle, but just be pulled back in and see Mark Hamill the way it is. There were almost shots where I felt like I could see the still from Return of the Jedi that his face was re-pulling from, because how a deep fake works is just they're taking as many stills as they can find of a person's face and aligning them in the way that it would need to be done to create a realistic representation. And so with that, it's almost as if like, oh my God, that's an exact angle. And so like there are some shots where it looks almost more like Luke, whereas it doesn't not look like Luke in some shots, but there are some where you can maybe see it looks a little bit more like him. So I know that feels weird, but overall, there's no way it's not by a country mile the best one we've ever had, and if not one of the best I've ever seen in any movie of anybody.
And the most liberally used, with the exception of maybe The Irishman, which I didn't think was done
It wasn't
incredibly
good.
well. And it was also like quite like they didn't do it that much. They didn't put it to 11. They just kind of like painted it a little bit with like watercolors. I can't speak to at all the way deep faking is done, facial recreation and stuff. So I just like sit in awe of it. And I only have a cursory understanding of like audio production. I mean, that's sort of true. My only guess is that like what you're hearing that sounds just a little bit uncanny about his vocals is the product of them having had to overproduce his voice to make him sound younger, right? They're taking voiceovers by Mark Hamill, who's 40 years older than he was when he looked like this. And because his voice is quite like deep and gruff now, and he's a great voice actor, and maybe he can do a little bit just with his own talents. He probably can. But in order to make it sound younger, they had to get really experimental with their vocal effects. And in doing that, they've made it sound a little bit like a Daft Punk song. And they still did it pretty well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. There's no complaints. It was just in terms of if you're looking for something to be like, oh, that's how maybe the thing doesn't line up. That's where I would find the seam. But good God, it was near seamless.
So it was a incredibly generous training episode. Half the episode was Luke training Grogu in both like the spiritual components of the Force and also the physicality of the Force in like dodging bullets from the little training orb and levitating frogs and levitating yourself and jumping and also like meditating.
Standing on one leg.
Standing on one leg and understanding what it means to be one with the Force. And he was in the backpack at one point, and my God, it just goes on and on and on. There was, very important that there's like a lot of direct Yoda talk. Like he tells him about Yoda, and then there was just a tease of a Grogu flashback where Luke
Order
says,
66.
I'm gonna help you remember your past, and he puts his hand on Grogu's little head, and we see an even younger Grogu, even smaller, and his scope of vision is like kind of blurry, and just in front of him is three other younglings being taken down by Order 66, and then it blacks out.
I don't know if they're younglings. I think those were Jedi. I think, I could be wrong, but I think it was supposed to be Sindralig in the middle, who would be the head of the Jedi Temple Guard. And so it would make sense for him to be kind of on the front line of defense in this situation. I think just because it was the kind of his very iconic blonde ponytail and a kind of garb, but I could be wrong on that. I didn't really do too much research into the specifics on it. But that was a great scene to be able to see the 501st coming in and having clones were not, I don't think they were CGI for the first time ever. Oh, like that was so cool to actually see real clones. And it was in this weird haze, but at the same time, it makes you think of what some of the flashbacks could be like of the Clone Wars with Anakin and Obi-Wan in the Obi-Wan show, and it just gets you even more excited.
Well, and what we got to know about this flashback is what happened next. Did Grogu take them down because he's that powerful, and then where did he go? Or did he, rather than getting assassinated, did they break protocol and kidnap him? Did they hide him? Did they take him hostage because he looked like Yoda and they figured that was an asset? Like, what happened in between Order 66 and him being found in a storage closet at the beginning of Mando?
That's a great question in terms of, I didn't think about maybe he takes them out. I've been trying to rack my brain as who saves him. Because that's what I just assumed, that somebody was right about to step in and save him.
Maybe.
But maybe it is that he gets taken into custody and gets saved later by somebody else. Or maybe that he indeed does it himself and gets left in the Jedi Temple for a while, and then somebody else brings it, like some just random person on Coruscant finds him. Who knows? But yeah, that's going to be one of the big reveals that we'll get in Mando season 3, as well as the decision. I certainly assume those will both be saved for Mando season 3. But maybe, well, they can't put that stuff in the next episode. That wouldn't make any sense whatsoever.
No, they're going to come back to centralize Boba Fett in the season finale. And I mean, everybody will be there. Probably not Grogu and Luke, but like certainly Mando will be very prominent in the season finale. But we're going to reintegrate Boba Fett in the finale of his own show. I'm sure it, and I'm sure it'll be really good.
Yes, he needs to ride his Rancor.
But this will be our only appetizer for Grogu until season 3, which is fine because it's not like it was.
It was a phenomenal appetizer. Absolutely.
Something I loved is when Luke and Grogu are walking through the woods, and the way he's like taking these extra, like, Luke is using the Force to like kind of boost him forward just so he can keep up.
Yeah, just carrying his steps. That was really cute.
That was during the Yoda history lesson. At one point, he expressly says, "You're trying too hard. Don't try, do."
Mm-hmm.
But he's like taking the lessons verbatim, and it's so gratifying.
Yeah, don't try, do. Really, that's all you got. Get back up. Always get back up. It's more like he's remembering than I'm actually teaching him anything. It was that entire sequence of Grogu like becoming a frog and like really like flying around and hopping around and dodging the bullets. That was so great to see Ahsoka and Luke off to the side together. That was like, and of course, and then yes, the backpack sequence, but just all of it. It was so hard to pick. Like the rewatchability of this episode cannot be overstated.
Yeah.
In the connections with Empire and all the other connections with other training montages too, and it reminds you of Luke's training of Rey as well when he's talking about the balance and whatnot. So
well, and Leia, like I kind of thought, like is it totally out of the question we could see Leia in this episode, and we didn't, but it could have happened, especially considering
that was his first student.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is I think I didn't realize when we first saw Luke last year was that he didn't really have anything going yet. And so when we arrive on this planet and they're just building the school now, which by the way, so cool. Those droids were really awesome. It was amazing to me that like he's maybe the first Padawan. Grogu's the first Padawan at School Skywalker. And so like, yeah, I guess Leia's kicking around here somewhere.
Timeline wise, I believe Leia only trains for about a year. I think she trains for the year post Return of the Jedi. And like Luke trains her right away. And then I assume, well, no, she sees the death of her son. So she would have already had, I don't know, never mind. That's going to kind of put an end to that. I don't think she trained. Luke says that Leia is his first student, but that she doesn't kind of really graduate. I think this takes place before then. That's really all I'm trying to say.
Well, unless Grogu, in fact, doesn't continue to be a student of Luke's, like he might choose the chainmail over the lightsaber.
I think he will.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Maybe I just hope that. I mean, the thing is, I want him to have both so bad. And
I know
something that's frustrating about Luke, as much as I'm excited to see him, is how rigid he is here, because it's hard not to feel a little bit like he's being a hypocrite for still remaining close with his sister when he's telling his new student, you have to swear off all other earthly connections and things that you love. Well, like it's just a lucky loophole that Leia is your sister and has the Force and she's married to Han. And by the way, she's married to Han and she gets to train as a Jedi. And like it feels like there's inconsistencies, and maybe the solution is going to have to be the discovery that Din also is Force sensitive, and so it's okay for Grogu to be both a Mandalorian and a Jedi. And
yeah, I don't foresee that being the case. I think that's going to get major pushback now if they start to make Din Force sensitive.
Yeah.
But I think the maybe loophole is the fact that, and I've been on this for a while, and I'm certainly not the only one. I really do believe the titular character of the Mandalorian is about Grogu.
Yeah,
I think at the end of the day, that is who the Mandalorian is. I believe Grogu will become the Mandalore, and I think Luke's awesome line describes it best. It will take you many years to master the ways of the Force, and you may never see your friend the Mandalorian again, because Grogu, a short time for you is a lifetime for someone else.
Yeah, that's really interesting. You
And
take
I think
pause after
that
line.
Yeah, and I think that's the most important one, because Grogu literally can have the best of both worlds.
Mhm.
What is his right? His right was the Beskar that Din found also for his foundling. What is also his right? Probably to inherit the Darksaber by conquering whoever will one day kill his father. That will be what happens. Din will one day die, and the Darksaber will fall, and Grogu will immediately kill whoever kills Din. And then Grogu will have the Darksaber by right, and Grogu will be the heir to Mandalore, and thus have both lived his life with his father, learned and to be a Mandalorian, and then gets to wield a lightsaber in the end too. So I think it's going to be the best of both worlds. And then also it means that he doesn't end up getting taken down by Kylo when Kylo is born.
Yeah, that can't be anyway. They
No.
just can't do that. No
They
way.
would never.
Listen, I don't think I can come up with any other specific things about this episode, but there are them. Like I know that I love to see the Naboo starfighter. It's looking great.
It is.
It fits the character perfect. Yeah, I can't think of any other like wonderful fan service, but it's awesome, and I can't wait to watch it again. It's also fresh.
It is great to see R2 and tricking Din as well. That was just so him. And is that a bench? I thought that was a really funny line.
And he laid on it. He had a nap on it.
Yeah, it worked. It was perfect. I do have some really good quotes though, because it was a very quotable episode.
Okay.
I didn't see what's in that chest, and consequently, no laws have been broken, as far as I'm concerned. If you gentlemen load up your wares and head back to where you came, we can chalk this one up to you guys reading the map wrong.
So,
I mean, that
cool.
one is so badass.
Man. Yeah.
Think it through. I can see you're the smart one. Well, then maybe I'll retire. It's worth more than your whole town. That was good too. And just also, I had to write this one down because it was just Din Djarin. I'm looking for Skywalker. I came to see the kid, Grogu. And it's just like, oh my God, that's just such a great line to hear in Star Wars.
Yeah.
Din speaking to R2-D2, talking about Skywalker and Grogu. And it shows you who is in charge, and that Favreau and Filoni know what they're doing.
Definitely. Yeah, there's a lot of love in that moment.
But yeah, I'm an old friend of the family. He once said to me, size matters not. That's how he talked. He would speak in riddles.
And
Noah as a Mandalorian.
after that, do you remember the people in your world speaking that way too? And like, he kind of leaves it at that. We still don't really know where Grogu comes from, or if he has any recollection of his species. They didn't give us much of that.
But he should know Yoda, because Yoda would have trained all of the younglings. And so, like, Luke's talking about Yoda as if he didn't know him, and he should have known Yoda.
Maybe not though. Maybe it was day one. Maybe it was orientation.
Maybe he was early. Well, although he does seem to be remembering things as opposed to learning them, as Luke says.
Yes.
So much like your father. That was also really nice when Ahsoka said that.
Yeah.
Sometimes the student guides the master. Just overall.
Yep. Classic.
It's such a good episode.
Great. Do you have any trivia, or do you want to spare me?
I can give you a small amount of trivia. What were the colors of the Twi'leks who offered to clean the helmets of the Pikes who bombed the sanctuary?
Teal and orange.
Yellow and green. But maybe the color settings on your computer were slightly off, in which case, yes, teal and orange is correct. Who voices Cad Bang?
Oh, I have no idea. Famous person?
No, but I mentioned him earlier in this and figured that made it fair game. Corey Burton, but it was the main worry is that it just needed to be that voice. The character is the hat and the voice, and so it needed to be him back.
They seem to have a really good understanding of whose voices are crucial to the existing canon. Like, they've done that with Matt Whitwer, right? And
Sam Witwer, yeah.
Sam Witwer. And then what's her name, who plays the other Mandalorian. So they've recast some people, it's all right. In other cases, they seem to know where to draw the line.
Yeah, I gotta say, Rosario Dawson killed it this episode. That was pretty damn good. She played off some great Qui-Gon Jinn vibes, which is always what I say you want from Ahsoka. And so in terms of being able to live action represent an older Jedi guiding a young Skywalker as he's a young Jedi, that's she killed it. She really killed it.
And animated Ahsoka has a very youthful voice. And so even if that Ashley Eckstein was like had the proportions to play the role on screen, I mean, I guess it would be appropriate because you're already like used to the character sounding like that, but like something about Rosario Dawson feels more aged, more wise.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. What were the citizens in Freetown yelling for after Cobb was shot?
Oh, I don't know.
Med packs and stims.
What are stims? Stimulants.
So yeah, and the best part is like these are like literally in the Star Wars video games what your med packs are all like when you go and like, oh, get a med pack, or in Jedi Fallen Order you have your BD droid and he gives you stims, and every time you're low in health you inject yourself in the shoulder and it reboosts your health. And so it's just one of those nice little Star Wars video games help enrich the canon as well.
Nice. They're incredible with their attention to detail.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And it was Dave Filoni directed and Dave Filoni and Favreau written episode. So it was
the title, by the way, is amazing. It sounds like an old Western title. From the Desert Comes a Stranger. And I mean, it's pretty obvious we're talking about Cad Bane literally here, but like so many great Star Wars titles, you could pick it apart and apply that titular character to a lot of different people. From the Desert Comes a Stranger is also the story of Luke Skywalker. It's the story of Anakin Skywalker. It's the story of Boba Fett. It's the story of
Cobb Vanth,
of Rey. It's a lot of them. It's
absolutely
a really, really cool sounding phrase.
Yeah. And I mean, hey, even 3PO and R2 at the start of so I never really thought about just how specifically it transcends so many different characters in Star Wars. So that adds
Star Wars From the Desert Comes a Stranger.
Yeah, you really could.
Yeah.
But that silhouette was something to see for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Any other thoughts on this episode that we can contain within one podcast?
No, I don't think there is. I feel like I've not had a good containment of my thoughts. I've just been so incredibly excited about it, but I can cut myself off for that because it was just too enjoyable. That's all I can say now.
You're gonna have a million more thoughts about this episode before next week's finale, and you can incorporate those into our big rollicking conversation about the series as a whole next week, because there is just one more episode of the Book of Boba Fett season 1. That's very, very exciting. In the meantime, if you want to send us your thoughts about this penultimate episode, oh my God, I know you got them. You got to email us, recorder66podcast@gmail.com, or you can tweet @recorder66. I should say some birthdays as well. On Thursday, February 3rd, a happy birthday to Warwick Davis. And on Tuesday, February 8th, a happy birthday to John Williams, who actually did make an appearance in this episode. We heard some Force theme.
We certainly did. This was a very well scored episode. It was that great Luke and Grogu theme from the end of season 2 of Mando that was in it at one point, and so it was overall an excellent. Well, what else can we say? The episode was a stunner, top to bottom.
Be sure to like and subscribe to this podcast on your preferred podcast app, or if you're joining us on YouTube, make sure you like and subscribe over there as well, so that we can find more Star Wars fans just like us. Until we are together again,
may the Force be with you.